Hi, I'm Sarah. Today I'm going to read you the story of Amber, which is titled like this: "You are our lifesaver," my mom told after I transferred them another $400. But then she forgot to hang up, and I heard their real opinion. She thinks we love her. She's a mistake. So I kept quiet until the next money transfer. Well, let's go? I'm Amber, 28 years old, and I work in finance at a pretty decent company. It all started when my boss called me into his office on a Tuesday morning. Mr. Rodriguez has been my supervisor for 3 years now, and he's actually a pretty decent guy. I knocked on his door and walked in. He was sitting behind his big wooden desk with some papers spread out in front of him. "Amber, have a seat," he said, gesturing to the chair across from him. "I've got something important to discuss with you." I sat down and tried to read his expression. He looked serious, but not angry. "I've been watching your work for a while now," he started. "Your financial analysis reports are consistently excellent, and the way you handled the Morrison account last month was impressive. You saved us a lot of money and potential headaches." I felt myself getting a little excited. Was this a raised conversation? "Thank you. I really appreciate that. That's why I'm offering you something big," he continued. "We're expanding our Dallas branch, and I want you to transfer there as a senior financial analyst. It's a promotion, better salary, more responsibilities. You'd be helping to build something from the ground up." My heart started racing. This was huge. I'd been stuck in this same position for 2 years, watching other people get promoted while I stayed put. "That sounds amazing," I said. "What kind of salary increase are we talking about?" $15,000 more per year, plus relocation expenses covered," he said. "And there's real room for growth there. You could be looking at management within 2 years if you play your cards right." I was trying to process this. 15,000 more? That was life-changing money. But then, reality hit me like a brick wall. Dallas was 8 hours away from here. 8 hours away from my family. How long do I have to decide? Give me an answer by Friday. That's 4 days. I know your family situation, and I understand this isn't just about you, but think carefully about what's best for your career long-term. I thanked him and walked out of his office in a daze. My family situation. He knew about my family situation because I'd mentioned it before when I couldn't travel for conferences or stay late for certain projects. Let me explain my family situation because it's complicated. I'm the oldest of 3 kids. My parents are good people, don't get me wrong, but they never finished college. Dad works construction when his back allows it, and Mom used to work at a retail store until her arthritis got bad about 3 years ago. Then there's my brother Jake, who's 25, and my sister Maya, who's 23. Neither of them went to college either. Jake works part-time at a warehouse, and Maya bounces between retail jobs. They both live in their own apartments, but barely scrape by. I was the lucky one, I guess. I was always good at math and reading, and my parents pushed me to study hard. I got a full scholarship to a decent financial college, which was honestly a miracle because we couldn't have afforded it otherwise. My parents always reminded me of that too. "We raised you right," Mom would say. "We made sure you read books and did your homework. That scholarship was because of how we brought you up." And they were right, I suppose. They did encourage me to learn. They bought me books when they could afford them, helped with homework when they could. So, when I graduated and got this job, I felt like I owed them something. It started small. Mom needed $200 for a car repair. Dad needed $300 for some medical bills. Jake needed help with his security deposit. Maya needed money for work clothes. It just seemed natural to help out when I could. But then Mom's arthritis got worse, and she couldn't work full-time anymore. The mortgage payments were getting hard for them to manage on just Dad's income, so I started helping with that too, just temporarily, until Mom could get back on her feet. Except, Mom never really got back on her feet, and somehow, without really noticing how it happened, I became the family ATM. I was paying their entire mortgage, helping with Mom's medical expenses, covering Jake's rent when his hours got cut, helping Maya when she was between jobs. I was making decent money, but after helping everyone else, I barely had anything left for myself. I was still living in a crappy 1-bedroom apartment, driving a car that was falling apart, buying generic groceries. I hadn't taken a real vacation in 3 years. I hadn't even been able to save up for a down payment on my own place. But they were my family, you know, and they were always so grateful. "You're our angel," Mom would say. "We don't know what we'd do without you." It felt good to be needed, to be the one who could solve everyone's problems. Saturday came, and I drove over my parents' house for our weekly family dinner. Mom had made her usual pot roast, and everyone was gathered around the kitchen table. Dad, Mom, Jake, and Maya were all there, talking and laughing like always. After we finished eating, I took a deep breath. "I have something to tell you all," I said. "My boss offered me a promotion this week, but it's in Dallas. I'd have to move there. The room went completely silent. I watched as the color drained from Mom's face. You can't leave us, Amber. You can't just abandon your family like that. I'm not abandoning anyone, I said. It's just a job opportunity. But Mom was already crying, real tears, streaming down her face. If you move away, we'll have financial problems. You know we depend on you. The mortgage, my medical bills, your father's back problems, and moving costs so much money. You'll have all these new expenses, and you won't be able to help us like before. Dad nodded grimly. Your mother's right. We need you here, Amber. Family comes first. Jake and Maya were both looking at me with worried expressions. What about my rent? Jake asked. I can't afford it without your help. And I just started a new job, Maya added. I won't be able to pay my bills if you're not here to help when I need it. Looking at all their faces, seeing Mom's tears, hearing the panic in their voices, I felt terrible. How could I even think about leaving them when they needed me so much? Okay, I said finally. Okay, I won't take the job. I'll stay here. Mom immediately stopped crying and smiled through her tears. Oh, thank goodness, she said. I knew you'd make the right choice. You're such a good daughter. Everyone seemed relieved, and the conversation moved on to other things. But I sat there, feeling like I'd just made the biggest mistake of my life. Monday morning, I walked into Mr. Rodriguez's office and told him I couldn't take the Dallas position. He looked disappointed, but not surprised. I understand, he said. Family obligations can be complicated, but Amber, I want you to think about something. Make sure your relationship with your family is really as equal and healthy as you think it is. I didn't know what he meant by that, but I thanked him anyway. I'd made my choice. I was staying here to take care of my family, just like I always had. 3 weeks passed after I turned down the Dallas job, and I fell right back into my usual routine. Work all day, come home exhausted, and try to figure out how to stretch my paycheck to cover everyone's needs, plus my own bills. I was working extra hours whenever I could, picking up overtime to make sure I had enough money for the mortgage payment, Mom's physical therapy appointments, and whatever emergencies came up. And there were always emergencies. My friend Jessica from college had been texting me about taking a long weekend trip to Miami. She'd found this great deal on a hotel, and it would only cost about $800 total for flights and everything. Come on, Amber, she kept saying. You haven't taken a real vacation in forever. You deserve this. But $800? I could use that money to get Jake the new phone he'd been hinting about for months. His old smartphone was barely working, the screen was cracked, and he was always complaining about how slow it was. So I told Jessica, no, maybe next time, I said. I've got some family stuff to take care of. The truth was, I felt good about helping my family. It made me feel useful, needed. When Mom called to thank me for paying for her massage therapy sessions, or when Jake hugged me and said I was the best sister ever, it made all the long work hours worth it. At least, that's what I told myself. Then, one Tuesday afternoon, while I was sitting at my desk, going over some budget reports, my phone rang. Mom's name popped up on the screen. Hey, Mom, I answered. What's up? Hi, honey, she said, and I could hear that tone in her voice, the tone that meant she needed something. I hate to bother you at work, but we've got a little situation here. What kind of situation? Well, the kitchen sink started leaking yesterday, and your father tried to fix it himself, but he just made it worse. Now there's water damage under the cabinet, and we need to get a plumber out here. The guy we called said it's going to be about $400 to fix everything. I rubbed my forehead. $400? I'd just paid their mortgage and my own rent this week, plus I'd covered Maya's car repair. My checking account was getting pretty thin. Okay, I said. I can transfer the money tomorrow morning. Oh, Amber, you're a lifesaver, Mom gushed. I don't know what we'd do without you. You're our only hope, sweetie. Your father and I were up all night worrying about this, but I knew you'd come through for us. You always do. Her words made me feel warm inside. We said goodbye, and I was about to hang up when I realized the call was still connected. I could hear voices in the background. Mom must have forgotten to end the call on her end. I was about to hang up myself when I heard Mom's voice again, but she wasn't talking to me anymore. She was talking to someone else in the room. Well, that was easy enough, Mom said, and her voice sounded completely different, cold, almost annoyed. Little Miss Martyr always comes through. I froze. What were they talking about? $400 for a sink that I could fix myself with a $20 part, Dad said, and I could hear him laughing. But why should I bother when our personal ATM is so eager to help? My heart started pounding. I pressed the phone closer to my ear. She's so pathetic, Mom continued, always so desperate to be needed. That's what family is for, she said. mimicking my voice in a whiny tone. God, she makes me sick sometimes. At least she's useful, Jake's voice chimed in. He must have been visiting, though I wish she'd stop being so cheap. I've been dropping hints about that phone for weeks, and she still hasn't bought it for me. Maybe if you were more direct about it, Maya said. She was there too. I just tell her my car broke down or I need money for work clothes. Works every time. They all laughed. Actually laughed. Remember when she turned down that job in Dallas? Dad said. I thought we were screwed for a minute there. Thank God your mother put on that crying act. I should have won an Oscar for that performance, Mom said proudly. The second she mentioned moving away, I knew exactly what to do. A few tears, some guilt about abandoning the family, and boom, she stayed put like a good little piggy bank. She thinks we actually appreciate her, Mom said. But honestly, she's nothing special. Just if she ever stopped paying for everything, we'd drop her in a heartbeat. The funny thing is, she actually thinks we love her, Dad added. Love her? I never even wanted her in the first place. She was an accident, born way too early. We were young and stupid, and having a kid ruined everything for us. We could have gone to college ourselves if we hadn't been stuck raising her. I felt like I was going to throw up. The room was spinning around me. The best part is how guilty she feels about everything, Maya said. Like she owes us something just for existing. It's so easy to manipulate her. She could probably live on instant noodles and still find money for us, Jake said. Maybe I should suggest that next time she says she can't afford something I want. They all laughed again. That horrible, cruel laughter. I hung up the phone with shaking hands. I sat there staring at my computer screen, but I couldn't see anything. My whole world had just collapsed in the span of 5 minutes. I don't know how long I sat there at my desk after hanging up that phone. I transferred $400, finished up my work on autopilot, and drove home in complete silence. When I got to my apartment, I just lay down on my couch and stared at the ceiling. My phone kept buzzing with a text message, but I ignored it for a while. Finally, I checked it. It was from Mom. Thank you so much for helping with the sink repair, honey. You transferred the money so quickly. You're our angel. Love you. I was nothing to them, a cash cow. I spent the rest of the evening replaying that conversation over and over in my head. The worst part was realizing how blind I'd been. All those times I thought I was being a good daughter, a loving sister. All those sacrifices I made, thinking my family appreciated me and needed me. It was all fake. And suddenly, Mr. Rodriguez's words made perfect sense. He'd told me to analyze my relationship with my family, to think about whether it was really equal and healthy. He'd seen what I couldn't see. They weren't afraid of losing me when I mentioned Dallas. They were afraid of losing their money source. The next morning, I dragged myself to work, feeling like a zombie. But something had shifted inside me. The fog was clearing, and I was starting to see everything differently. Around 10 o'clock, I walked into Mr. Rodriguez's office and knocked on his doorframe. Amber, come in, he said, looking up from his computer. How are you doing? I'd been thinking about what you said, I told him, about my family situation. He leaned back in his chair and studied my face. And? You were right. It's not healthy or equal at all. My voice was steadier than I expected. Is that Dallas position still available? A slow smile spread across his face. It is. Are you ready to take it? Yes, as soon as possible. He nodded like he understood. Good for you. You'll do great in Dallas. When can you start? I need a few weeks to handle things here. Wrap up my lease, sell some furniture, that kind of thing. Take the time you need. I'll start the paperwork today. I thanked him and went back to my desk, feeling lighter than I had in years. For the first time in forever, I was making a decision for myself instead of for everyone else. That afternoon, I called my landlord, Mr. Peterson. He was an older guy who'd always been decent to me. Hi, Mr. Peterson. It's Amber from apartment 4B. I need to discuss my lease situation. I'm transferring to another state for work. Family reasons make it necessary for me to leave as soon as possible. I know I'm supposed to give 30 days notice, but is there any way we could work something out? He was quiet for a moment. You've been a good tenant. Never late with rent. Never caused problems. When do you need to be out? Ideally within 2 weeks. Tell you what, let's terminate it effective next Friday. No penalties. You've earned some flexibility. I almost cried with relief. Thank you so much, Mr. Peterson. That means everything to me. The next week was a blur of activity. I sold most of my furniture to a consignment shop, packed my essential belongings, and started looking at apartments in Dallas online. I found a decent one-bedroom place and arranged everything through a realtor. The hardest part was not telling my family. Every day, I expected one of them to call asking for money or help with something. But somehow, I made it through the week without any contact. I scheduled the movers for Thursday and took Friday off work to finish up the last details. When I handed Mr. Peterson my keys, I felt like I was shedding an old skin. "Before I go," I said, "can I ask you a favor? If anyone comes looking for me, especially my family, could you not tell them where I went? Just say I moved out?" He looked concerned. "Everything okay?" "It will be. I just need a clean break from some toxic people." "You got it. As far as I'm concerned, you just disappeared." I bought him a nice bottle of wine as a thank you gift, and we shook hands. "Take care of yourself, Amber," he said. Saturday morning, I drove to Dallas, 8 hours of freedom, with my entire life packed into my car. I'd arranged to start work on Monday, and I spent the weekend getting settled in my new apartment. Monday came, and I walked into my new office feeling nervous but excited. My new team was welcoming, and the work was challenging in a good way. I had real responsibilities. People actually listened to my ideas, and I felt like I was finally using my skills properly. 3 days into my new job, my phone rang. Mom's name popped up on the screen. I stared at it for a long moment, then let it go to voicemail. She tried again an hour later, then again that evening. I didn't answer any of the calls. The next day, she sent a text. "Haven't heard from you in a while, honey. I was thinking of coming over to visit this weekend. It's been too long since we've seen you." I knew exactly what that meant. They needed money for something and wanted to ask in person. I deleted the message without responding. Over the next few days, the calls and texts escalated. First Mom, then Dad, then Jake and Maya, all of them trying to reach me, all of them probably wondering why their personal ATM wasn't responding. Finally, Mom sent a text about the mortgage payment being due soon and asking me to transfer the money like always. I smiled as I read it. For the first time in years, I smiled at a message from my family, because I knew I was never sending them another penny. The calls and messages kept coming for another week. By then, they were getting desperate. Jake called me 6 times in one day. Maya left voicemail saying she really needed to talk to me about something important. Dad texted, asking if I was okay because I wasn't responding to anyone, but I ignored them all. Every single message, every single call, it felt amazing. Then, Mom sent a panicked text saying she'd driven to my apartment but found it empty. She said she'd talked to my landlord and he told her I'd moved out but wouldn't say where. I actually laughed out loud when I read that. Good old Mr. Peterson had kept his word. The messages after that were frantic. Where was I? Why wasn't I answering? What was going on? They tried calling my work, but I'd already told HR that if anyone from my family called asking for me, they should say I no longer worked there. A week later, I decided it was time to end this once and for all. I sat down at my laptop and wrote an email to Mom. I wanted to put everything in writing so there would be no confusion. "Mom," I wrote, "I heard your conversation after you called me about the sink repair. I heard everything you, Dad, Jake, and Maya said about me. I know you think I'm nothing, a nobody, just a convenient source of cash. I know Dad never wanted me to be born and that you blame me for ruining your lives. I know the crying at dinner was all an act to manipulate me into staying. I know none of you actually love me or appreciate anything I've done for you. So congratulations. The nobody is no longer going to support any of you. Don't bother trying to contact me because I'm changing my phone number. You'll never get another cent from me." I hit send before I could second-guess myself. The response came the next morning. Mom had written this long, pathetic email saying they were all begging for forgiveness. She claimed that after reading my email, she'd had such severe chest pains that they'd had to call an ambulance. She said she'd been in the hospital all night with heart problems. She wanted to meet with me in person to apologize and make things right. I read the whole thing and just shook my head. Even now, she was trying to manipulate me, making up some dramatic medical emergency to guilt me into responding. It was so obvious and pathetic. I deleted the email without responding. True to my word, I changed my phone number that week. I also blocked all of them on every social media platform I had. I set up filters so any emails from their addresses would go straight to spam. For the first time in my adult life, I was completely free from them. And you know what? It felt incredible. My new job was going great. My boss in Dallas actually valued my work and treated me like a professional. I got a raise after just 2 months, something that never would have happened at my old job. Without having to support 4 other adults, I suddenly had money, real money, money for myself. I bought new clothes, got a better car, and started saving for a down payment on a house. I even booked that vacation Jessica had been talking about. We went to Miami for a long weekend, and it was amazing. I haven't spoken to any of my family members in 6 months now. I don't know how they're managing their bills, and honestly, I don't care. I'm sure they figured something out. Maybe Dad actually learned to fix that sink himself. Maybe Jake got a full-time job. Maybe Maya stopped bouncing between retail jobs and found something stable. Or maybe they're struggling financially for the first time in years. Either way, it's not my problem anymore. My old friends from home who know the whole story have been supportive. They don't update me about my family, which I appreciate. The few times someone has mentioned seeing one of them around town, they just say they look fine and change the subject. I'm saving money for the first time in my life. I'm looking at houses, planning for my future, thinking about maybe going back to school for my MBA. All things I never could have done when I was supporting 4 other people. The best part is how different I feel about myself. I used to think I needed to be needed, that my worth came from how much I could help others. But that wasn't helping, that was enabling. I was enabling 4 grown adults to avoid taking responsibility for their own lives. Now I help people in healthy ways. I volunteer at a financial literacy program on weekends, teaching people how to budget and save money. I mentor younger women at work. I donate to charities that actually make a difference. But I don't light myself on fire to keep other people warm anymore. Sometimes people ask me if I miss my family or feel guilty about cutting them off. The answer is no. You can't miss people who never really loved you in the first place. And you can't feel guilty about refusing to be someone's victim. I'm 29 now, living in a city I love, doing work that challenges me, saving money for my own dreams instead of funding other people's lack of ambition. I have friends who actually care about me as a person, not as a source of money. Last month, I went on a weekend trip to Austin just because I felt like it. I stayed in a nice hotel, ate at fancy restaurants, and bought myself a beautiful necklace I'd been wanting. The whole trip cost about $800, the same amount I used to give my family in a typical month. As I was sitting by the hotel pool, sipping a cocktail and reading a book, I thought about my old life, how I used to work overtime just to pay other people's bills, how I lived in a crappy apartment and drove a falling-apart car so my family could live more comfortably. How I almost turned down the opportunity of a lifetime because 4 people had convinced me I owed them my entire future. I'm so grateful that phone call happened. If I hadn't overheard their real conversation, I might still be trapped in that cycle, still believing their lies about family and obligation and love.